All right.
And good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Hope Chapel Baptist Church, Sunday School Revelation. We are in chapter 6 this morning, studying the four horsemen and the seals, things that they reveal. We went over the first two verses. The first verse, John saw the Lamb opened one of the seals, and he heard the noise of thunder and four beasts saying, "Come up hither." See, the first beast, the first horseman that's represented here is the white horse. We went over that last week, and that represents peace, so-called peace, as we looked at it, as we studied it. It's a false peace, of course, and it has a place. White represents here as the Prince of Peace, which is Christ, which is not represented here. It's the Antichrist copying the Prince of Peace. White also represents purity and righteousness, and that's who he tries to present himself as being, which he is not. He's a copier. He wants everybody to think that he's all that there is, and he's the answer to the world's problems. And prophecy leads to that. It gave you some things that led up to that. Horse stands for powerful actions. And here they're connected to government. Crown, of course, represents authority, from Zechariah 1 and verse 6. White also speaks of triumph and victory here. And he does have triumph, and he does have victory over the world when he first comes out. He takes over. He has the support of the nations behind him, and there's a false peace. But we notice also that not only that, but he went forth conquering. There was actually no peace, right? He talks of peace, but he gets authority. This is the first 3.5 years in the tribulation. He gets authority, professing to be a peacemaker, but he takes the power of the armies of the world and he goes forth conquering. He conquers all who oppose him. And it's not going to be a good world nor a good situation for people who think that they're going to glide right through the tribulation. As I've heard in years past, people say that, well, when the rapture takes place, I'll get saved into tribulation. Not if you've heard the gospel, you don't. We already studied that. I love it from 2 Thessalonians 2. We know that God shuts the door. He sends strong illusion that men will believe a lie. Those who've rejected Christ, that are still here, he sends strong illusion that they believe a lie, that they all might be damned. We got a lot of religious people in the world who have tried to use God and profess Christianity that are not real. So he goes forth conquering and to conquer. Verse 3 and 4, we saw the second seal, and it talks about blood and war. This is when it really ramps up. And it's serious in its beginning because of the delusional attitude and minds of people that are taken and overtaken by his delusional promises, which are false promises. And everybody hopes, and everybody wants better, and the world's in such a situation that they'll accept just about anybody that has an answer they think is the right answer. And it's pleasing to most people of the world, but the religious side of it's not pleasing. And one of the main sources that's not pleased will be Islam. And those will be some of the people that are the hardest to convince. And they will have to be conquered to the point that they get under subjection to the Antichrist. And the Antichrist will be supported, no doubt, by a religious system. We look at that later. It will, and we looked at the church where it was heading as we studied the 7 churches. religious system heads to a point. Biblically speaking, the 7 hills of Rome is where the headquarters for that religious system is, and that is the Vatican. So, of course, the Muslims ain't going to like that. Today they're trying to make a one-world church, and they're kind of getting along. But when they're trying to force issues, they'll have a problem. So the problem will be a lot of it will be religiously. We notice religion causes a lot of wars, doesn't it? I look at all the people that are slaughtered because of religions. So-called Christianity in the Dark Ages, as the Christian Crusaders, which were actually Catholic Crusaders, slaughtered people by the thousands and hundreds of thousands. And that put a bad name or a bad taste in the mouth of many cults and religions around the world. And they fought and murdered and killed each other. So it's not a one-sided thing, but it sure did give Christianity a bad name because of a false cult and the death and the things that followed it. Even our ancestors that came to America came here to escape Catholicism because they were being persecuted unto death. They were literally being slaughtered and murdered and burned at the stake, burned alive, in many cases. Religion has a big part in the world order and one world religion and one world government in the days that are coming. It's spear pointing to that. I gave you some of that as we studied the churches as they come together. We need to spend our time basically on what we're looking at here. Sometimes it's hard to get a look at that without looking back and bringing you back up to date to just a little bit of it. I hope our listeners out there, if they want to learn where this came from, where it's heading, they'll just pick up and start back from lesson number 2 and come forward with us. And from lesson number 2 on the internet or on the Facebook or your other ones that pick up on it, we know that you can pick it up from lesson number 1 and go all the way through. But it's very important that we understand what's happening. Verse 3, the second seal, the peace taken from the earth. This is the last half of the tribulation. This is the part that really gets rough and bad. It's bad enough. People are dying all over the world. Things are going on all over the world. Serious things. And the world's in chaos. But it hadn't got to the judgment yet, as far as strong judgment and extreme death and famine and starvation, which is starting in the first part of all of it. Actually, it's going to be starting in the beginning of it, part of it, but it doesn't get seriously bad until we find nations that are literally starving to death. Diseases on the rampage. It's hard to trust people when they lie to you about diseases, isn't it? Everything led in our country today, 3 different disease organizations that are supported by our government. They're doctors and they're scientists. And I don't know if you saw that on the news or not. They're leaving by the groves because they're lying to the people about some of these shots, especially to the children. They said they can't take it anymore. They're covering up, and they're not even allowed to talk to the press. So they're leaving. They didn't say how many have left, but they said they were leaving by the grove, scientists and doctors in these disease organizations, simply because our government is lying to the people. But that's just a small portion of what's coming. You think they're lying now, wait till tribulation period when they try to cover everything up. You can't believe and trust anything but God. Really, I don't much myself here and now. But in that day, people don't have any resource to turn to. The people of God are gone. But the actual preachers that were real are gone. They're raptured out. There's nothing here that's trustworthy except men and their own senses to look to God by faith and come out of that and trust the Lord. And that doesn't happen to most nations because most nations don't have the truth. Most nations don't have Bibles like you and I have. They don't have the truth of the Word of God. They have cults. We've got enough of it in our own country. But can you imagine all these nations who have no Bible, no resources at all to turn to find out the truth until God sends the 144,000 Jewish rabbis to preach the gospel of the coming kingdom, and the Lord Jesus Christ and multitudes will be saved out of nations who have not heard the gospel, and possibly some even in our country. Because everybody in America has never heard the gospel. Some of them have, some of them haven't. Most people heard about Jesus, but they've never heard the gospel. Most cults recognize Christ. Even Islam. About all the cults in the world recognize Christ as being a prophet and a man, but not God. Not the Son of God, not the Redeemer of all men. So he's recognized in that sense, but he's not recognized in the sense that he is the Redeemer of mankind. Not some prophet or preacher or priest, but Jesus himself. Second seal involved the red horse. We studied that, and he went out another horse that was red, verse 4, and power was given unto him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth. That's gone. What little they had is gone. Can you imagine an earth without peace? Chaos. We haven't seen it on this scale. Nobody in the world's ever seen it on this scale. In the middle of a war zone, that's possibly what a lot of it's going to look like. The world's going to be in chaos. And so he represents chaos. Peace taken, that they shall or should kill what? One another. One another. This is not necessarily a war, but it is war. Peace is taken. There are wars, and there are going to be rumors of wars, Jesus said, during that time. But not only will they be in war zones, but they'll be in cities and states and places of neighborhoods, basically, are going to suffer because people stealing from each other, killing each other just to survive. It's going to be that bad? Yes, it's going to be that bad. You think that the trucking organization and things are on halt now, and things are hard to get, getting harder to get, and will get even worse and worse. There'll be a time when you can't get hardly anything. The military will soak all of it up that they can to keep the operation of military. Society, you notice in Ukraine, the people that stayed in those cities, they're living, they're just surviving. And that's basically what the world will look like during the time of the red horse. It's in a survival mode. We've got people storing food, digging a bomb shelter and everything else to go through tribulation. Don't have to get saved. You go out before tribulation. Don't have to dig a bomb shelter. Don't have to prepare for it. Only preparation we need here to do today is, prepare and use your sense to stock up a few things in the support of here and now, not years to come. But we see peace taken from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. That sword stands for weapons and slaughter. Peace is taken. And so we did study that. Now we want to look at the third seal. That's famine. This is one that I want to read you some things that I think are connected to this, and I want to show you why. It has to do with money system. It has to do with the change of the currency and all these things. The devaluation of all things. It comes from a documentary called End of the Road. End of the Road. And I wrote down some of the things I thought were important to share with you. And it's about how money became worthless. And this has a lot to do with tribulation, what's coming. It's happening as we sit here on a small scale, but it's going to get on a big scale in the near future. Global finances in 2008 were said to be fixed. Who's president then? Obama. We had a financial crash we didn't know about. It was fixed. They jack them up by printing money, by hiding the problems, and that's what's been going on basically since then, but now worse than ever. Trillions of dollars have been printed under this administration to jack up the problems that are out there. The inflation that we feel now is said to be 9.7%. It's actually 15 or 16%, maybe higher. You don't get truth basically from the insiders. They cover it up. People that I know and trust that have a lot of understanding of this, they're involved in it, that used to serve in it, explain it very well. Now, the symptom of a much deeper problem, the United Nations hold a monetary conference. It's about money and the situation and the problem of money. It began in World War II. And this is where it all began, about the money system. And they were having difficulties because of the wars in the World War and the spending. Everybody was going to be completely broke. Every country in the world, their money was going to be worthless. And so they met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. 44 allies, America, and even also the Soviet Union. They met there on a currency. They wanted to come together on one currency, one world, one country's currency that everybody could look to exchange for gold. And the U.S. dollar was the currency that they settled on. The reason for that, because of our industry. Our country was producing more than any country in the world. We were in better shape than any country in the world, even in World War II. It exploded, industry exploded in World War II. In the sense that it got bigger and bigger, and it's been that way ever since. We became number one, we stayed number one, and we're still, at this present moment, number one. It's fixing to change, basically, to China. So they settled on our currency. Gold was $35 an ounce then. It's $2,800, I think, now, per ounce. They keep jacking the price of gold up, so they'll have something to help support some of the currency that they're printing. And they printed more than they could possibly, even the world could pay back, basically. It's impossible. It is impossible to pay back what they have printed and what the world owes, especially the United States. Our treasurers, I heard her say on the news recently, one of them here, I'll probably get to it, they talk about it's okay to print money, but it's not. Let me see if we can get to that later. But we see that they came together and they used our country to store their gold. And many countries brought their gold to America. It's still here. And they left it here. Some of them want it back, but they won't release it. The reason they won't release it is because it's been sold so many times, they can't cover it. They can't cover it. Situation going on in our country. Under President Johnson, our country was running a deficiency because of Vietnam. That's understandable. So countries to the United States were spending more than they had in gold reserve. Printing more. money than they could account for in their gold. They've done that then, they've still been doing it. It hasn't stopped, it's gotten worse. Nixon called for emergency suspension of gold converting money system. He stopped it so it wouldn't break itself and fall down itself. That was way back then. So they did it to defend the dollar. In 1971, August the 15th, came together to abandon the old system, which worked on the now system, which don't work. They changed the system to what we have now, and it don't work either. Most of us don't understand these money things. The reason I'm giving you this, it's not going to change what's happening. But at least we will know, and those who are listening will know, that the world's in a bad shape financially. Everybody keeps hoping that everything's going to get better. Some folks are actually making more money than they used to, but a lot of folks are not making near that. You might be making more money, but you're paying out a whole lot more than you're making. And if you've got a raise, your raise is not keeping up with what's the charges out there. All the prices of the groceries, all the prices of everything that gas and oil has to haul, and they can't get it, and the price of it's gone sky high, it makes everything else go up. And so we see inflation as a part of tribulation. We're going to get to that here shortly. On the famine part, it's a part of tribulation, but it's worse than most people think it is. Inflation is bad, but you talk about an inflation, there's coming a time when there's no air in it at all. So what they changed then in 1971, it doesn't work today. It doesn't work today. It's actually destroyed within itself, within the network of what they have done. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work. And they keep printing money to prop up the system. But eventually, and they know it. These people know it, from White House to Wall Street to all these people know it. And they keep propping it up so they can squeeze some more money out of the people in their investments. 401ks are not going to be worth a hill of beans within a short time. It might be a couple of years. It might be tomorrow. It might be 2 or 3 years. But it's not going to be worth a flip in a short period of time. Because of the crash. When they crash, the people that's got their money invested, the little man is going to lose all of his. The big men see all this coming. They know it's coming. They're just squeezing all they get out of it so they can bank it. And the average man is the one that's going to pay the price when it's all said and done. He's going to lose it all. Even if the big man's, if he doesn't invest properly, don't know what he's doing, he's going to lose his too. But most of them know what they're up to, and they know what they're doing. What we have here is called a fiat currency. F-I-A-T, currency. What does that mean? It's a forced currency. It's forced by the government. They will force it upon the people. The populace will be forced to do what they're told. Currency will eventually disappear to cards and then disappear to a mark of the beast, basically. That's what's coming, that's what's happening. And that's where it's spearheading to the mark of the beast. The currency has a lot to do with with tribulation and Bible prophecy. Even though the words themselves are not there, we see them there because of the mark of the beast. And where does it come from? And what is it all about? It's a way to buy and sell. Now you see and understand where I'm coming from. It's how they buy and sell in the tribulation period. Without the mark of the beast, in that period of time, men can't buy anything, and they can't. It's a forced currency that's going to be forced on the human race. America is one of the ringleaders of all these things as far as forcing. We're a free nation at this point. We've lost a lot of our freedom already. A lot of folks have been asleep. The church is asleep, basically. Preachers are asleep. Church members are asleep because they don't know what's happening. They don't know it. They don't understand what's coming. They don't know why, but they take the word of the news media and everything else about there, and the cover up in our country and in the world is unreal. It is literally unreal, the cover up of what's happening to society and where we're heading. They're pushing as hard as they can to a one world government and a one world currency. They're literally at this point in time fighting on the backside, on the inside of the governments to figure out who's going to be in charge of this currency. Our country is working behind the scenes, high speed, to take charge. Is that going to be a good thing? No. No matter who gets it, it's not going to be a good thing. Because the results is going to end up the same. Devastation. Starvation. Starvation also causes diseases, right? And we're going to be seeing some of those things that are coming from this resort for the things that are happening in the first part of tribulation to the middle of the tribulation. We're talking about the middle right now. And when the resources are not there, there's nothing that people can do but turn to the Antichrist. And most of them are ignorant to who he is. And most of them will receive the mark of the beast. And most of them, and the Bible said all who do are damned. Everybody who takes the mark of the beast will go to hell. Everybody. And multitudes of people will take it. Around the world, multitudes will take it. And so their destination, their doom in the process of taking the mark of the beast. The fiat currency is simply a forced currency. And it's not going to be dollar bills. It's not going to be pocket change. It's going to be starting out with plastic. And we can't change that. Well, I'd like to keep my money, government. No, we're going to a new money system. It's going to be plastic. That's the first stage of it. Why are they doing that? It's a big cover-up. It's like everything else is because it's a failing process of what they've done. They've destroyed the whole process of what we are. Capitalism is on a downward spiral of destruction. And capitalism is a free nation. And people who come together and build businesses freely, and they make it work. But anything else is forced. You get away from capitalism, you get into dictatorship. You get into a one-world leader such as the Antichrist, and there is no capitalism in the tribulation period. They want to do away with it. The communists and everybody else in that particular manner and way, they want to do away with it. They're going to have their way in the tribulation in the sense that it will be done away with. But it ain't going to make them happy because they ain't going to like it either. A lot of people want something, they don't know what they want, and when they get it, they wish they didn't have it. That's what's going to happen in the world. It's a money and a currency that is different. It's actually a different system instead of currency. To devalue is to make cheaper. Like most countries of the world, they devalue to make stuff cheaper. And it devalues. And things are going to get more devalued than ever. Prices are extremely high and going higher. You don't get much of anything for your money. Ponzi scheme also makes no money relies on eventually investors lose. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's found in investments. It's all new to me. I've learned these things by study and by watching documentaries of people who know what they're talking about. I don't teach and preach things that are not accurate, is not true. If they didn't have the documents and have the people saying and hearing, I wouldn't have paid no attention to it. The Ponzi scheme, you've never heard the word. I haven't. You may have. I don't know. I didn't even know what it was until I started studying. It's fraudulent. Investment schemes. America's full of that. People don't realize it. All these investors that we put our money in the banks, in our 401k, which I don't have. Most companies do. They offer it where I work, but don't have it. I saw what it done years ago. I had some in. I took it out. I lost a lot of it, but I didn't have much to start with. I had about $2,000 and some left after the crash. That part of the time. What little I had left, I took it out. I never went back to it, so I don't have a savings. What I save, I carry, whether it's 30 cents or $30. Get away from some of these things because they'll tell you that it's doing well. But then it's not. Some of the people I've been listening to say, if you got a savings, especially 401k, you better put it in the bank. If you lose $1, lose it. Because you're going to lose it all if you don't. You're going to lose it all if you don't. Take it out and put it in the bank what you can. Ponzi scheme is fraudulent. It's an investment scheme. It promises high returns on investments and a low risk. That's a lie. These are men who know what they're talking about. That's a lie. Investors paying off investors. Now listen to this. What they do, they get people to invest. And they're paying off investors who, if they've had some money in there, and this group of people's now ready for their money. So to cover up what ain't really happening, these investors are giving their money to these people who are retiring and taking out their money. How long is that going to last? When people quit investing, there's no money to give them because their investments have been fraudulent. Only people making money on it basically is the insiders in Wall Street. So investors are literally paying off investors, and it's happening more and more. The money is not leveling off, and it's not producing what these investors are telling the people. It's not happening. Not happening. I had a profit sharing where I used to work. And when I left at my age, I was supposed to get it all. They wouldn't give it to me. They gave me $1,200. They're going to give me $1,200 a year. Well, I figure next year I might get one more. $1,200 check. And that'll be it. It's probably going to fly down the river, but everything else. It's a few $1,000s for profit sharing. But I probably won't see it. I don't lose sleep over it, but I'm just telling you that I'm not looking to get it. I really not. I'm not looking to get it. So investors are paying off investors. And it's happening more and more, and it's getting, these are places that are being propped up. And they look good on paper because of the way they're writing. But these things are heading, this is what's heading to the one world money system, the one world government. All these things are coming together. The Ponzi scheme makes no money. It relies on, eventually, the investor's loss. When it's a Ponzi scheme, it literally relies on the investor's loss, people who've invested their money. The government IOUs to the U.S. Treasury have climbed to trillions. We're now, $30 trillion in debt? 30 trillion. There ain't that much gold in the world to cover that. Just our country. Treasury borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow. Now they stop buying our bonds, crash. When things start really getting bad, government bonds will crash. And when they can't sell no more bonds to prop up their deceitfulness, it's going to crash. Inflation from 1 working to 2. And from 2, to borrowing more and more, finance more and more. Inflation now is probably 15%. People have borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. They get credit cards and they run them up to the max, and they have to get help to get out of debt. Throw them in the garbage. I did years ago. I don't have a credit card. Don't want one. It's bad enough just trying to survive without them. And don't pay their high interest rates. While people are demanding more welfare, medical free insurance, college and school, they want the government to pay all that, and free housing, more and more. How long is this going to last? It's going to crash. We're at the point of no return. What will happen? In 2008, 2009, the world would not let it crash. In those days, they wouldn't let it crash. The world came together. We didn't know it. It wasn't publicized. They came together. And now it's propped up. Forerunners of what is coming, which is a crash. They propped it up by lies and deceit and printing money that they don't have. So it don't show up as a complete crash. They're not ready for a crash, but they're getting ready for a crash. Getting ready for a crash. People are putting their hopes in men and governments. Mine's in Jesus. I hope yours is, because that's all we have. Amen. Adam Ferguson, the author of When Money Dies, buying anything tangible, he says, that can trade or can resell later. That's the smart move. If you can buy something that's tradable or worth something later, buy it. But if it ain't, don't. Because it's going to crash. This was the author, this man, Adam Ferguson, of When Money Dies. He's already seen it. He foresaw it. These people that are in that stuff know what they're talking about. The rest of them are being bought off, and they're enjoying their livelihood of robbing everybody else. Today, the government is allowing people who rent another's house to live free. You don't have to pay rent under this law. I guess it's still in operation, right? Biden put it in place when he first got into office. You can't make a man pay rent for a certain amount of time, and as far as I know, it's still active all over the country. They're living rent-free if they want to. If they're crooked enough, they will. But there's a lot of that going on in places, and the people who own the properties can't even get their rent until that is lifted. Now, repair will soon be almost impossible for repairs and different things that we do because we can't get the resources on certain things. The United States crisis will affect every country in the world. Everybody knows Ben Bernanke, that's got a little age on him. From years past, he was Federal Reserve Chairman. He says the United States can print as much as they want to print. Legally, that's not so. This is a former. Today's people are the same, they have the same thought. They try to print their way out of problems with printing money. That doesn't work. And we're fixing to find out that it doesn't work. I'm already seeing it happening. It's beginning to crumble. One morning we'll wake up to a different world. Might be in the morning when you hear the stock market crashed. Dollar crashed. The economy has crashed. Are they going to warn you? Don't count on it. It ain't going to happen until it happens. They don't want to warn you. The reason they don't want to warn you is because they want to squeeze all the money they can out of people's savings. It happens quickly. There's no prediction on when it does, but when it does, it's too late. But I promise you, it will happen. How do I know that? Because I know what the book teaches. I know what's happening. The four horsemen give us illustrations of the times and the problems. And these things are, beloved, are related to these times and these problems. That's why I know that they're a part of prophecy and what's happening. Mike Maloney, the CEO of Gold and Silver Company here, he says, what is happening now? In past always failed. What they're doing now has always failed. He's kept up with it in history for centuries. It's always failed. What they're doing, the system that they're operating now doesn't work. No discussion from the top. Government tries to manipulate the price of gold and silver to keep you from buying it. They don't want you to own it. They want to keep it. Believe in currency, they say. Currency's going to be all right. Just continue the way you're going. It's okay. Alan Greenspan. Everybody knows about Alan Greenspan. It knows much about news. This was in 1998, maybe before a couple of his time, maybe Brother Junior. 1998, before your time, brother. But in 1998, let me get back where I was. Alan Greenspan said, the central banks stand ready to lease gold should the price rise. They were already suppressing the price. And that was way back in 1998. The banking government, secrets in Wall Street, the gold that is such as 1 ounce has more than one owner or one claimer. If they keep it and you buy it, it's probably got several owners. It's really not yours. Unless you have it in your own safe. The rich get richer by scheming. The world is at the mercy of their governments. 2008 was the biggest financial crash in human history, but it's covered up. It was delayed by the same poor decisions that brought about it in the first place. The massive bailout, not a solution. Remember bailing out all these big companies? Government money, print money, so that it wouldn't crash, so the economy wouldn't crash. But a massive bailout, not a solution, but merely time for the people responsible to wring a few more dollars out of the dying system. These are things that I've got from people that I trust. Do we have time to protest ourselves or to protect ourselves from it? The most valuable commodity of all is preparation. God's people be prepared. Stay in the Lord's will. Financially get out of debt as much as you can. Don't buy what you don't need. But what you do buy, make sure you can trade it or sell it later. Why is that, preacher? Because there may become a time when you can't get anything, and you will need some things for survival. Survival has got a lot to do with what we do with what we have now. We don't know how bad it's going to get while we're here at the church. We have time to protest ourselves, protect ourselves from the most valuable commodity of the world. Yes, that's preparation. And banks and brokers are not the answer. You can run out to your broker all you want to in your bank and sit down and talk to them. All they're going to tell you to do is invest, invest, invest. That's what they're there for. They get paid for that. They get paid big bucks. And it's from people who make investments. Investments are good, but used to be good, but they're not anymore. If you got a good one, you better thank God for it. And if I had one, I'd cash it in. I'm serious, I'd cash it in. If I had one, I'd cash it in. But get out of debt. Get ready. And be prepared. Those are some of the things that I studied from that documentary. I watch a lot of things. And I look at a lot of things that has a lot to do with the spearheading of Bible prophecy, where we're at, and what is happening in our world. And some of us are feeling the effects of it. I am. And most of you are, if you know what to look for, and if you're not asleep, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're asleep and you don't really care and you're nonchalant, you go on life to suit yourself and live the way you want to, do the things you want to, and ignore God, and ignore faithfulness, ignore service, ignore witness, you're in trouble already. The basic church, according to Scripture, is asleep. Prophetically asleep. Most people are not aware, and many of them are different. They're suffering the apathy, which is they're not concerned. I'm doing all right. I've got all I need. I'm able to do this. I'm able to do that. And so I'm not concerned. It ain't about apathy. But apathy is where we are. If we're not careful, and I think basically that's one of the biggest problems with the average church, is apathy and unconcern of the people. And some of the preachers, many of the preachers, they suffer from apathy and don't even know it, because they're not looking at what's happening to their country, the world, and their church. They talk about this and talk about that, but it has no effect on them. They've gotten used to the dark. That's an old saying. They've kind of gotten used to it. And as it grows fast, and they don't see it. They felt the experiences of it. They've had loss because of it. But now they're so used to it, it's not bothering them. But what happens in the end, the churches are going to be empty. They're emptying out all over the country, around the world. The doors are being shut. Many churches, I heard just recently, some churches have shut the doors. Some more in North Carolina because they had no attendance to help support it. It's happening all over the country and around the world. Some of the bigger ones, some of the cults are not experiencing much of that. They're enjoying their little playhouse. If you want to look at a real preacher who was really concerned, look at Jeremiah in his day. He preached and preached and preached to none effect. They hated him, they despised him, they laughed him to scorn. And then when all of it was over, and most of them died and starved and everything else, Jeremiah walked out with the king's permission and went over in Egypt to spend his last days there. God blessed him in his life. And the rest of them went into slavery, or they died, or they were scattered across the face of the earth. And Noah preached 120 years on what's coming, and nobody listened. And when God shut the door on that ark, they woke up. But it's too late, wasn't it? It's too late. So what we're seeing here is a lot of things that are happening. Beloved, it's a pitiful situation, but it's a real situation. It's what's happening in the world today. The red horse speaks of war and bloodshed. Carnage is the result. Matthew 24, verses 6 and 7. A measure of wheat in those days. Beloved, let's look at, I'll close on this. Verse 5, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat on the horse, on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see, thou hurt not the oil and the wine. The oil and the wine actually represents good stuff, high-priced stuff, basically. Some things were spared under this force. If God didn't save a percentage of it, there'd be nothing left. Nothing left. And what we see here, The balances were a symbol of commerce. You ever notice in the Commerce Building there's a statue holding balances? Commerce is to balance things, keep it level. But when the balance goes like this, and over here is where all the weight is, there's nothing left. A measure of wheat for a penny at that time was a day's wage, which today it could be anywhere from $50 to $200 in the average workplace, or more. A day's wage. A measure of wheat, I think, was something like a pint or a half a pint. It would cost you a day's wage. That day's coming. People don't realize what literally is coming to America and the world. It costs you a day's wage to get a measure of wheat, which represents our bread. That wouldn't even make a loaf, would it? A loaf of light bread. $50, $100. That's a time of starvation. So what we look at there, if we close this in verse 6, I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts. They measured a wheat with a penny and measured barley. But we see what the situation is serious. It's serious. And we'll have to pick up on the closing of that next week because of our time. I hope you stay with me. We've got a lot to show you. A lot that's happening in the world, a lot that's coming. And most people are unaware of it, especially those who don't know God. Father, thank you for our time. To our audience, I pray those who don't know Jesus that they might be saved. Right here, right now, while there's time, while there's hope. Next week may be too late. When you shut the door, on them, it'll be too late. We love you, trust you, and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.